The Cincinnati Bengals have been one of the most aggressive teams in the NFL this offseason, and yet, as we sit here in late July with training camp just around the corner, there's a feeling that the front office isn't done yet. That's right, Who Dey Nation, the rumor mill is churning, and the latest intel suggests that the Bengals could be on the verge of another significant move before the start of the 2026 season. I'm Dre, and welcome back to Street Hoops. We need to talk about the latest Cincinnati Bengals rumors because Paul Denner Jr. of The Athletic just dropped a mailbag that has the entire fan base buzzing. He said something that should make every Bengals fan sit up and pay attention. He said he believes an important contributor for 2026 is not yet on the roster. Let that sink in for a moment. The Bengals have already added Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, Boy Mayfie, Brian Cook, and a host of other impact players. They've reshaped their defense. They've added depth. They've done everything you could reasonably expect a front office to do. And yet, one of the most connected insiders in the business is saying there's more coming. That's not just speculation. That's a prediction from someone who has his finger on the pulse of this organization. But what happened next shocked everyone, because Paul Denner Jr. didn't just stop at predicting a move. He laid out exactly where the Bengals could be looking to add. He mentioned linebacker, cornerback, and swing tackle as the three most likely positions for an upgrade, citation.transcript. And if you've been following this team at all over the past few months, you know that linebacker has been the position that fans have been screaming about the loudest. It's been the position that has felt like the missing piece, the one area where the Bengals have been unusually quiet despite having the cap space and the need to make a splash. So let's talk about what's really going on here, because I think there's a deeper story that most fans have completely missed. Here's where things become even more interesting. According to the Athletic's mailbag, the Bengals' strategy seems to be seeing how things play out in their camp, as well as other teams getting more desperate about their needs and seeing if partners emerge, citation.transcript. That, along with an intriguing list of available free agents, makes Daner think an important contributor for 2026 is not yet on the roster, citation transcript. So the Bengals are playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They're waiting for other teams to get desperate. They're waiting for the market to move in their favor, and they're positioning themselves to strike when the time is right. That's smart. That's calculated. That's how you build a championship roster without overpaying for talent. But the biggest twist came later because Denner specifically mentioned that the Bengals could make a trade in the mold of the Billy Price B.J. Hill deal, citation transcript. Remember that trade? The Bengals sent Billy Price, a former first-round pick who hadn't lived up to expectations, to the New York Giants in exchange for B.J. Hill, a solid defensive tackle who has been a key contributor ever since citation transcript. That was a masterstroke by the front office. They identified a player who was a better fit for their system, a player who could contribute immediately, and they made a deal that didn't cost them any additional draft capital. And now Daner is suggesting they could do something similar with one of their odd men out on the defensive line, potentially fetching a veteran linebacker or corner in return. That's the kind of creative thinking that separates good front offices from great ones. And that brings me to the linebacker situation because I think that's where the Bengals are most likely to make a move. Let's be real about what we have at linebacker right now. Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter are penciled in as the starters, and I like both of those players, I really do. Knight has the size and athleticism to be a three-down linebacker. Carter has the instincts and the football IQ to be a leader on this defense, but they're also unproven. They haven't been asked to carry the load in the NFL. They haven't faced the kind of pressure that comes with being the starter on a playoff caliber team. And behind them, the depth is really thin. Shaka Hayward, Joe Giles Harris, Liam Anderson, Jack Dingle, these are guys who could potentially contribute, but they're not proven commodities. They're not guys you can rely on if one of the starters goes down. And in the NFL, injuries happen. They're inevitable. So if the Bengals don't have quality depth at linebacker, they're going to be in trouble. But here's the thing that I find fascinating about this situation. The Bengals have been linked to several veteran linebackers throughout the offseason. Names like Bobby Wagner, Bobby Okereke, Jerome Baker, Matt Milano, and Shaq Thompson have all been floated as potential additions. And let me tell you, any one of those guys would be a massive upgrade for this defense. But the Bengals have been almost awkwardly quiet on the linebacker front. They had the cap space and the need, but they weren't in on Devin Lloyd, who wound up signing with the Carolina Panthers for 3 years and $45 million. The Athletics' Paul Denner Jr. confirmed the Bengals weren't in that big money sweepstakes. They also showed initial interest in Arnold Ebiketie, but moved in a different direction. So what gives? Why are the Bengals being so cautious at a position that was arguably the worst on a terrible defense last year? The answer, according to Bengals Wire, is that the Bengals are all in on Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter. They believe the second-year duo remains the way of the future at the needy spot. And you know what? I respect that. I respect a team that believes in its young players, that's willing to give them a chance to prove themselves, that's not going to panic and throw money at a problem just because the fan base is clamoring for it. But that doesn't mean they're not going to make a move. As Paul Denner Jr. noted, the Bengals could still make a free agent signing or trade during training camp in the name of better depth, and the Bengals have been known to make moves after camp opens. Last year, they signed 3 players after camp started, so don't be surprised if we see something happen. And here's where things get really interesting. The Bengals lost one popular trade target idea before training camp when the Dolphins hit Jordan Brooks with a contract extension. Brooks racked up 183 total tackles last season and is still just 28 years old after being a first-round pick in 2020. He would have been a perfect fit for the Bengals, and it was easy to link the two because the front office in Cincinnati has been unusually aggressive this offseason. But now he's off the market, and that's a blow to the Bengals' options. But there are still other names out there. There are still opportunities to improve. And as Denner noted, the Bengals could make a trade that mirrors the Billy Price B.J. Hill deal, where one of their defensive linemen who might be odd man out could fetch a veteran linebacker or corner in return. That's a smart way to address the need without spending additional draft capital or cap space. Now, let's talk about the cornerback room, because this is another area where Paul Denner Jr. mentioned the Bengals could add. The Bengals have a solid group of cornerbacks, but there are some questions. DJ Turner is the clear number 1, and he's coming off one of the best coverage seasons in the NFL last year. He's a legitimate lockdown corner. But behind him, there are some question marks. Dax Hill has shown flashes, but he hasn't been consistent. Josh Newton is a young player with potential, but he's unproven. And the slot corner position is still a battle between Jalen Davis, Josser Taylor, and others. So there's room for improvement. There's room for depth. And what's interesting about the cornerback situation is that the Bengals are reportedly not interested in Terrion Arnold, who is the most sought-after name on the cornerback market right now. Arnold has some legal troubles, and a lot of NFL teams have reached out to him. But the Bengals are not among them. That tells you a lot about how the front office views the cornerback room. They're comfortable with what they have. They're not desperate for an upgrade. But they also recognize that they might need to add some depth if they're not confident in what they have behind Turner. Let's move to the offensive line, because this is the third area that Paul Denner Jr. mentioned. The Bengals have their starting 5 set. They have a solid group of starters. But the depth is a concern. Cody Ford is the primary backup swing tackle, but beyond that, there are a lot of question marks. Javon Foster, Christian Jones, Andrew Coker, Jalen Rivers, these are all guys who could potentially contribute, but none of them have proven themselves in the NFL. So if the Bengals suffer an injury on the offensive line, they could be in trouble. And that's why Paul Denner Jr. mentioned swing tackle as a position to watch. Now let's pivot to a topic that has been generating a lot of buzz. Chase Brown's contract extension. This is a situation that has all the drama of a contract negotiation, all the intrigue of a player who wants to stay but also wants to get paid, and all the complexity of a front office that has to balance multiple priorities. Paul Denner Jr. was asked about this in his mailbag, and his answer was fascinating. He said yes, he believes Brown will be a member of the Bengals in 2027, and he laid out a number of reasons for that. He said that Brown has become a centerpiece of what the Bengals do on offense. He said that Brown has challenged Jamar Chase consistently for most scrimmage yards each year. He said that the running back franchise tag is digestible, around $14 to $15 million, which is the second lowest paid position, only topping specialists. And he said that Brown might even sign a deal before this season, but that would largely be dependent on negotiations with other prime candidates like DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Myles Murphy. And I think that's the key takeaway here. The Bengals have multiple extension-eligible players, and they have to prioritize. DJ Turner is the clear number 1 priority. He's their top cornerback, and he's entering the final year of his rookie deal. Paul Denner Jr. identified Turner as the top of the list. But if negotiations with Turner stall, the Bengals could pivot to other players like Dax Hill, Miles Murphy, or Chase Brown. So the domino effect is real. The extension for one player could impact the extension for another, and that's something that we're going to be watching very closely. Now, let's look at the numbers for Chase Brown because they tell a really interesting story. Brown rushed for 1,019 yards and 6 scores on a 4.4 average last year, while also catching 69 of his 88 targets for 437 yards and 5 more scores over 17 games. That production came while the offense juggled multiple quarterbacks in what was ultimately a lost season. He's been a reliable starter for the last 2 seasons as Cincinnati has developed him nicely since selecting him in the 5th round of the 2023 NFL Draft. He's the clear-cut top option at running back heading into the final year of his rookie contract. He's expressed his desire to remain with the team that drafted him. In an interview promoting Bounty, Brown said, "I would love to do something and be a part of this team. I don't want to go anywhere else." He also said his representation and the Bengals have been working hard and been in communication regarding a potential extension. So there's a lot of incentive to get a deal done, but there's also a lot of incentive to be patient. Because here's the thing, Brown was left off ESPN's top 10 running back rankings in its annual survey of over 70 executives, scouts, and coaches. Pro Football Focus ranked him 18th out of 32 starters. Despite crossing the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career last season, Brown's standing among NFL running backs is not where it needs to be for the Bengals to commit significant money to him going forward. SpotRack's market value for Brown is a 4-year contract worth $52 million, with an average annual salary of $13 million. That's a significant deal for a running back, and some NFL evaluators have expressed concern that Brown's value doesn't match his projected cost. The RB market has recovered a bit in recent years, with 7 players now making at least $14 million per year. 3 of those deals were inked this offseason alone. Travis Etienne also signed for $12 million per year as a free agent back in March. So there's a clear argument that Brown belongs right in the middle, somewhere between the $8 to $10 million range that would put him outside the top 13 contracts. That would match his value more accurately, and it would give the Bengals the flexibility to extend other players as well. And that's where the situation gets really complicated. The Bengals are paying tens of millions every year to roster Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Those 3 are the important components of the offense, and paying a tailback too much per year on top of it would not be a wise use of resources. Cincinnati proved it could find a capable back in Brown without investing significant resources. If Brown and the front office can't come together on an extension prior to the regular season, letting him play out the final year of his rookie contract, and exploring next year's free agent market or draft class would give the Bengals flexibility to reinvest that money elsewhere. But that's a risky strategy, because if Brown has another big season, if he continues to produce at a high level, his price is only going to go up. And the Bengals could find themselves in a situation where they have to either pay him more than they want or let him walk. And then there's the Zach Taylor situation, which adds another layer of pressure to all of this. According to Paul Denner Jr., Taylor needs to get the Bengals back to the postseason to stick around. Anything shy of that feels like the restart button gets hit. Every other coach in the AFC North was let go in some way, shape, or form. Taylor remaining as the only incumbent only adds to the pressure. Taylor needs to coach winning football again for the sake of urgency, and because the situation around him, from Joe Burrow to the roster as a whole, has become as good as it could be. So there's a lot of pressure on Taylor to win now. And that pressure trickles down to the entire organization. The front office needs to give Taylor the resources to win. The players need to perform. The coaching staff needs to put them in a position to succeed. And if any of those pieces don't fit together, the whole thing could fall apart. But I want to end on a positive note because I think there's reason for optimism. The Bengals have made real improvements. They've addressed their biggest weaknesses. They've added talent and depth. They've got a quarterback who is entering his prime and a roster that is built to win now. So while there are concerns, while there are question marks, while there are rumors and speculation about moves that may or may not happen, there's also a lot of reason to believe that this team can be special. It's going to come down to execution. It's going to come down to whether the players can perform at the level they're capable of. And if they do, if everything clicks, then the Bengals are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Now, I've given you my take. I've laid out the facts. I've shown you the numbers. But I want to know what you think. Will the Bengals make another move before the start of the season? Type Y for yes. Type N for no. And who should the Bengals extend first? DJ Turner, Chase Brown, Miles Murphy, or Dalton Reisner? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, if you want more no-filter football coverage, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to Dre Talk Sports, and turn on notifications so you never miss a single update from the jungle. We're just getting started, and I promise you, the best is yet to come. This is Dre signing off from Street Hoops. Let's go get that win.